anybody else struggle with worrying about finances as they retire? Anybody else? Anybody else worry about it? Thank you for being honest. My name is, oh, now that's scary. My name is Leanne Balta, and I am one of your organizers here at Your Silver Journey, and I will be moderating today's panel. Thank you so much for being here. How many of you have been here before? Excellent, welcome back. And how many is this your first time? Wonderful, yay. Well, you're in for a treat today because we have some fantastic panelists that are going to help us with today's topic. So welcome. Look at my notes so I don't miss anything. A little housekeeping. Take a look at the beautiful people in the back row. All of our back. They are usually standing on the outside of the room when you first get here. Those are our education partners. And it is because of them that we are able to have these discussions amongst ourselves, free to you and other guests. So let's give them a welcome. Thank you, friends, for being here. They help with everything. So they are truly somebody you want in your phone. So as you leave today, make sure you stop by and visit them. Put a face with a name, get them in your phone. In fact, if you're new, you may not know that we will never market to you without your permission. So your education partners won't know that you need them unless you approach them and make contact with them. So be sure you do that before you leave today. Little housekeeping. In your chairs, you should have 2 pieces of information. You should have your handout to take notes. It also has your panelists' information on there, who they are, where they're at, where they're from. It is a place for you to take notes because later today, as I finish up asking them some questions, there'll be time for you to ask your questions. So you want to jot down those notes so it's not so quiet after I'm done asking questions. All right. I'm going to go ahead and ask my panelists to come up here today. And my coach is watching. You guys might not know this, but I have a dear friend who's watching this seminar, and she has made some recommendations. And our panelists will mic themselves so that you don't get blasted with those fun little piercing ear noises. So thank you for doing that. Our panelists today are not only beautiful, smart, well-versed on today's topic, but yeah, they're just generous with their time. So if you need anything, like I just reached out to Jenny last night, I had a question, and she is just so responsive. So these seminars are really about you finding someone that you trust, that you can call, and you have in your phone, you can call them, and they can get you one step closer to where you need to be. So thank you for that. All right. As if I need a mic. I would like Kim from Storen Financial. Will you tell us how long you've had Storen Financial?
Storen Financial was started in 1963. And it was owned by my husband. I fell into the family. It was owned by my husband's father, and he started the business. My husband and I, Greg Storen, we opened up our location in Zionsville in 1999. And so Storen Financial really started as just a tax preparation company back in the 60s. And then in 99, my husband and I moved more towards businesses, financial planning, and taxes.
Thank you. And Ronnie, you're at Storen right now.
I am.
And how long have you're a partner at Storen.
I am, yeah.
How long have you been there?
So I joined the team in 24, but that was born from a broad relationship I had with Greg and the rest of the team for many years prior. I was working in a little bit more of a consulting role and working with both the Storen team as well as about 300 other advisor offices on case consultation and insurance solutions. And so Greg and I started a strong friendship throughout those 7 years of working together, and that led me to join the team, and eventually I'm a partner with Kim and Greg, and since 2024, been in the industry since 2012.
Ronnie came to all the parties.
He
Came all the
did.
parties.
He came all the parties.
Uninvited or not.
He just kept showing up.
Add you to the team.
So we might as well just hire you.
Well, it kind of reminds me about your relationship, Kim, with Lisa, because
Yes.
Lisa has kind of been in your sphere for years.
We just keep
So-
grabbing all the great
Yes.
people.
You're like, this makes sense,
Yeah.
this makes sense, let's just come under one umbrella and then you can share those resources. And for us as clients, like it just.
Leanne, I'll be offering you a job soon.
Yeah, just for us clients, it's like, oh, just kind of a broader umbrella of services, which then brings me to you, Jenny, because you don't do just estate law or elder law, you do both. So tell our friends about you, Jenny. Do you have a job?
No, we own a practice, so I can't go anywhere. My name is everything says Jen. Oh, that says Jenny. I go by Jenny. A lot of things out there says Jennifer. I co-own Indiana Estate and Elder Law with my husband, Justin Shoemaker. We're a team of about 20 professionals that only exclusively work in the estate and elder law space. I always tell people we don't pretend to do or be anything else. We're not the people to speed dial if you need to get a divorce or need to file bankruptcy. We stay in our wheelhouse because we do it well. So a little bit about elder law specifically, I always tell people elder law is a lot like estate planning, but we're keeping our eyes on kind of the more the future focus of long-term care and navigating incapacity. So we do a lot of long-term care, Medicaid asset protection planning. We help people navigate guardianships, which I'm sure we'll get into today. So I wanted to touch on what elder law is, because a lot of people don't know what that is. It's definitely a subset of estate law.
And this topic today comes from a variety of reasons, but as someone who serves aging adults in their retired years, whether they're moving to a smaller home or they're moving to another city where their children are, I mean, this concept of having money last, I mean, it's just part of our conversation with those consultations. What do you think we should do? And I'm like, well, I don't know what your financial plan looks like. Should we bring your planner into the conversation? And so there's just a lot of questions around this money thing as we get older. So,
Well, we'll just all hit the lottery.
well,
Yeah, that seems the way.
let's pay attention to the stats on those.
Yeah.
Buy more lottery tickets.
Yeah.
But then you need to talk to us about tax.
Yes. Let's see here. I just remind you guys that there is going to be an opportunity for you to ask questions when I have peppered their brains with questions. And just again, want to give you guys the freedom to tag on to each other's conversation. That's what this is. This is to be a conversation. So I'm going to start with Ronnie. I'm going to put you on the hot seat first. So a lot of us do worry. And why do you think that is? I mean, we have this common denominator of worrying, feeling anxious. Speaking for myself, I feel like it's a moving target. And so why?
Well, in my experience working with clients every day to help both prepare as well as then obviously transition into and execute retirement, what I'd probably hear most common is there tends to be some anxiety around, I guess an analogy, this may be a better way to frame it. An analogy that I use is when you're working, you're on a particular highway, right? And every 2 weeks, every 2 miles or so, there's a gas station. You're getting a refill to keep you moving forward. A paycheck's coming in. Well, you flip to retirement and there are no more gas stations, right? Your tank needs to last you. And I think that causes for a lot of people an anxiety around, well, I don't know exactly what inflation is gonna do to my purchasing power down the road. Do I have enough? Am I prepared if I have a large health expense that I survive and then continue to thrive beyond? Am I structured appropriately to make this nest egg and my various income sources last me? And unless you have a lot of confidence and savvy to do some of that just pure mathematical work, and that's only one half of it, right? The math can say you're perfectly well and good to retire, but mentally being prepared to shift from an accumulation mindset into a distribution mindset without a lot of preparation ahead of time, it can feel like you're just kind of winging it. And for a lot of people, that's really scary when you hang it up and say, I'm retiring from a job I know I can do well, that pays me well and supports my lifestyle. I'm retiring from this, and I don't know if that opportunity will then be available for me if I feel like I'm not doing well at retirement. I think that's probably where the bulk of the anxiety tends to at least originate from.
That feels very real to me, this whole concept of winging it.
Sure.
And then when someone tells me what to do, that feels kind of restrictive.
Sure.
So, yeah, anybody else feel restricted by their financial planners? So, when I'm sitting down with clients and they're asking me about the next phase, there's just a lot of questions around, is that decision the right decision? They're either being very restrictive in their thought processes or maybe not restrictive enough.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us about that? Like, how can you make sure, well, I guess I know how to make sure. We see you, Ronnie, right? Like,
Sure.
have a plan, but how do you balance that difference between, when I meet someone and they're very, very, very conservative, and then someone who's maybe not conservative enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times that is solved by just being educated and getting the information, being able to make informed decisions about how to interact with your finances, both heading into retirement and then obviously throughout. You know, we deal with a lot of clients where maybe it's a mental block, where they have a really hard time going from, again, that accumulation mindset to the distribution and having their asset base really support their lifestyle as opposed to the other way around, right? Saving and their lifestyle being able to support the growth of their asset base. So sometimes it's just a mental block, and education can go a long way to say, hey, look, let's look at the research, let's do the math, let's understand some of the driving principles of retirement success. You know, I tell clients all the time, retirement, whether or not you're successful in retirement, a lot of it comes down to just how do you spend. You can make a lot of really good choices to add some efficiencies, tax-wise, from an estate planning perspective, make sure your assets are distributed the way you want to after life. But from just a pure like retirement spending perspective, any plan comes down to what is that number, right? You can retire with $10 million, and if you're gonna spend $2 million a year, you'll fail. Okay. You can retire with $600,000, and if your monthly bills are $3,000 a month, you'll be fine. You can support that lifestyle. So solving for that restriction, we have people come in all the time, they have plenty of money, they cannot force themselves to spend it, okay? And a lot of it just comes down to educating yourself, having the right kind of information to tear down some of those blocks. I have enough money that if I spend at a reasonable clip, there will be money there tomorrow to address any emergencies. If you do a good enough job of structuring different pools from which to draw money for different reasons, that's one way you can solve that sort of restricted nature as well, is really start to earmark different pools of money for different reasons. I have an emergency reserve. I have an asset base that is meant to generate income to support a lifestyle. Having the education and the information is how you can kind of sidestep and solve some of that restriction that many retirees deal with.
Do people call you and say, I just saw a Corvette, does this fit in my budget?
Yes.
Do they?
And I deal with it in almost every review,
Yeah.
you know, is I'm trying to draw, for some people, I'm trying to draw out, hey, what would be nice to do for yourself over the next 12 months? I literally have a new client we're bringing on board, we're lucky to work with, who jokingly inquired whether or not we will think about establishing like a travel agency. They told me, Ronnie, I will work with you if you send me on trips. We need you to help figure out where we can go, where we can spend our money. We're good savers and planners that way. We are not good spenders. We need your help.
Oh.
Yeah.
And Leanne, you talked about having like that restriction and it felt icky.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, don't think of it as a budget, think of it as a spending plan.
Okay.
Because people say budget and they're like, oh no, budgeted.
Yes.
So think of it as your spending.
Like a roadmap to
Yeah.
to navigate. Do you ask ask those questions that help me think about things that I wouldn't think about? Okay.
Tons and tons
So
of questions.
yes.
Yeah, as I go through an actual planning, service engagement of the planning sequence with clients, there's a lot of times where they'll have one or two things that are pretty important to them, and we'll expand on that conversation and say, well, do you do X? And, you know, how often do you buy cars? Do you typically finance them versus pay in cash? Which would you prefer? So we try to expand upon some of those baseline metrics of, can I retire and replace $10,000 a month of income? Sure, you can. Let's talk about what that actually means, what that looks like, where we source it from, and to Ken's point, can we structure out a plan that doesn't feel restrictive? You know, where a client wants to spend 15 and I tell them they can only spend 10, well, that is a restriction, we gotta work around that. But more often than not, we can solve the idea of feeling restricted by retirement. If you just have you're informed on what your options are, and then you're making active choices to do something or do nothing. Sorry, I'll be quiet here in a second. But I tell people all the time, as long as you have the right information, making a choice to do nothing is proactive as well.
Yeah, I think I like to know, like, if this, then that, and then just the knowing that the ramifications of that decision is very helpful.
Super important.
Yeah. Ms. Kim, what about these taxes? It seems like taxes, whether you save, you tax whether you spend.
Taxes
Like
are everywhere.
Yeah, how does that change in retirement?
I see, one of the biggest changes I see for retirement is when you go from the accumulation phase to the spending phase. So let's say you're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks and it has taxes withheld and you don't have to think about it. You just get that net money and you know that you can spend your net money. Then you make the change over to maybe Social Security and a pension and pulling money from your IRA. People are not used to deciding on their withholdings and deciding what they have to withhold. It's kind of been done for them for years. And so I've had some very sad meetings of people that retired and then just forgot about withholding. And so they come in owing $10,000 and they're in a corner crying and I'm in a corner crying for them. So there's that changeover from when you've got that withholding as part of your pay to when you've got to decide what that withholding is and you don't understand the tax to do it. A very big issue is Social Security. You can sign up for Social Security. Everybody thinks that Social Security will automatically withhold federal tax for you, and it doesn't.
Okay, so you get all this money, not all this money,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
You
All
get
of a
this little
sudden-
bit of money,
Yeah.
but you still need to pay taxes on it.
Yeah, and you still have to decide how much is withheld. You get an IRA distribution, nobody withholds money for you unless you decide how much that is. So there's always that switchover of understanding the tax ramifications and then understanding what's taxable. How is Social Security taxed? How is my IRA taxed? How is my Roth taxed? And knowing
And
that
those are all differently taxed?
they're all differently taxed. And then you gotta know, there's, part of it is taxed at 10%, and part of it is taxed at 12, part of it is taxed at 22. How do we live within these brackets that they give us so that you're not all of a sudden pulling everything out in 1 year and paying 35%, and then you get scared and pull nothing out and you pay 0 or 10. Let's balance it out and have a predictable cash flow and a predictable tax bill.
So it really is a moving target.
It is very
Feels
moving,
like
and
it
it changes
because
every year.
I mean, just last summer, the new budget bill introduced some deductions for seniors that didn't exist prior.
Yep.
And that changes the way we plan for clients, whether it's Roth conversion or larger distributions for pre-tax accounts. It's a moving target every year.
I have some people that come in that just have Social Security, and maybe they have a small pension. And they might be, every person in America doesn't pay tax on the first $16,000 that they make. So as a married couple, you don't pay tax on about $32,000. So if, let's say, your Social Security and your pension is 20, I might actually tell you to go pull $12,000 out of your IRA because you're gonna pay 0 federal tax on that. Let's not waste the 0. I don't want you to take out 20,000, 20,000, 20,000, and then all of a sudden you need a car or a roof, and you pull out 30, and that jumps you up to 22% tax bracket. Let's pull out a little bit off this 0 or maybe off this 10 and set it aside where it's not taxed. And then let's then plan for these bigger expenditures as you go along and even out your funds. So it may not just be that don't spend, don't spend, don't spend is the right answer. We want you to maximize that 0%, that 10%, and that 12% bracket.
I like the idea of somebody else watching all that.
And some people feel really like, I like tell them, go take 20 grand out of your IRA, and they're like, oh, I don't need it. I know. We're gonna set it overside in the savings.
Can you talk about people being surprised about taxes? Is there other surprises that you come up with, or not you come up with, that they are experiencing during this time?
Oh, Leanne, here's the biggest one. This is what angers everybody, is IRMA. I don't know, has anybody ever heard of IRMA rates for Medicare? If you are over 65, then you absolutely understand IRMA. And what IRMA says is that if you're taking Social Security, you have to pay for your Medicare. And Medicare is $189 a month. But IRMA brackets are different than tax. IRMA brackets say that if your income goes up a certain level, like if it goes over 121,000, you don't pay 189, you pay 289 a month. So someone will have a year where they take a lot of money out, and IRMA is a 2-year look back. So it's very surprising. You sell a farm, you sell a house, you sell a business, and then in 2 years, your bill for IRMA, for Medicare, goes from $189 to $560 a month. And all of a sudden we get the call, and they're like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't make this much money. Well, Medicare, what you pay for Medicare is based on your tax return 2 years prior. So everybody thinks Medicare is $189 a month. It is not. And IRMA kills everybody every 2 years.
Especially in the way it shows up, because it's almost always being deducted against your Social Security check.
Yes.
Right, so clients just experience a reduction in income, right? And may not have that knowledge base to tie that to an increase in Medicare costs from income they experienced 2 years prior. It's a really convoluted sort of system. And I tell clients all the time when it comes to IRMA, if you pay $500 a month for Medicare versus $189, you don't get to go to the front of the line, right? You don't get better treatment. You get the same Medicare everybody else does, you just get the pleasure of paying more. So can we help you avoid that hidden tax? Lots of time, yes. And that's a mixture usually of your different types of accounts and how they show up on your tax return. Money coming from a Roth doesn't show up in a way that impacts your Medicare costs. Certain dollars that come from a brokerage account that doesn't have like an IRA or wrapper around it, you can generate a decent amount of cash without a lot of taxable exposure necessarily. And so every year we're telling clients, we want to be creating your tax return for you, not looking at it after the fact. Can we help create your tax return throughout?
That's one of the biggest things that wealth management, investment management can do for you is, if you're gonna take money out, to make sure that you don't go over 121,000, or you don't go over the 220 limit. Can we bump up to it and keep your Medicare rates manageable? Or if you need money, to say, all right, we'll give you the money, but your Medicare in 2 years is gonna go to $350 a month. Are you okay with that? Making sure that you have an informed decision of what your Medicare, instead of being surprised. And when we do a tax return, we see those brackets, and it's a cliff. It's 121,000 this year. And so if someone is at 121, 110, then trust me, I will find a way to get that underneath. I will lie, cheat, and steal to get it underneath that 121, because that bump isn't worth it. So that, I think, is the thing that drives people crazy, is they're not informed about IRMA rates. It's IRMMA brackets.
And what is IRMMA?
I knew you were gonna talk
How do you think of that?
I don't.
I forget what the last two A's are, but it's income-related Medicare adjustment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amount,
Amount.
maybe, I don't know, I'm guessing.
There you go.
Miss Jenny,
Yeah.
how does legal planning help us financially?
It is quietly very impactful. You know, when I think of financial decision making and financial confidence around those decisions, I would assume that everyone in this room, especially because you're here today, are probably good stewards with your own money. And how I would answer that question would be, what my world allows you to do is to put people that you know and trust in various kind of estate planning roles, whether it's power of attorney, whether it's executor, whether it's trustee, doesn't matter, any of those very important roles. Put people that you know and trust to continue to be good stewards of your money. If you don't, not only would it potentially delay, you know, possibly getting someone in those roles, but ultimately that decision is taken away from you, and ultimately, if it, in a kind of the worst case scenario made by a court, a judge, makes that decision. And so I think from a legal planning standpoint, what it does is it allows you to be in the driver's seat of who you want to put in these roles that are gonna be your boots on the ground of something, whether you're incapacitated or after you pass away. You want people to keep on paying, well, like, no one wants to pay bills, but you definitely don't want to incur, you know, late fees and penalties, all because the person you picked may not be super good with money, or you know, so I think that's how I'd answer it, is putting you in the driver's seat of putting people you know and trust in those roles. And I've said this a bazillion times on these panels, and I'm gonna say it again because there were some new people here, that it doesn't have to be your oldest child. If you tell me that your oldest child has filed bankruptcy 3 times, maybe they're not the best fit for these roles. I say that semi-jokingly, but also semi-seriously, where it's, a lot of people think that you have to default to these certain people in these roles. There's no like requirement checklist for these people. So really, when you go through an estate planning journey and selecting who's going to serve in these roles, try your hardest to look at it in the most, you know, neutral, unbiased way possible, and who you select to fill these roles, because they're very, very important roles and can really make or break a lot of things if you don't pick good, suitable people.
And so will you, this is kind of a panel question, unscripted, will you help, like if I bring the 3rd child along to be my support person, will you educate them on the decisions that we've made together? Like, do I have to explain all the complications that we've decided together?
That's usually the most powerful way to interact with that scenario. I mean, we encourage clients all the time, particularly as we start to address the estate and you know, post-death distribution of monies. I mean, it is really, really powerful when those that might fill the roles that Jenny's referring to, but you know, even the beneficiaries, they understand what your wishes are while you're living, and they have some insight as to what, one, you're trying to accomplish, but 2, what are the pieces of your puzzle that you can use to accomplish. Because you know, they may then bring to the table some ways to help you, you know, whether that's mentally be ready to spend, you know, hey mom, I don't, you know, we're doing significantly fine. We don't need this pot of money you're hoarding for us as an inheritance. We'd like to see you use that. Why don't we go on a trip next year together instead, right? And so the more people, particularly that are important to you, that are gonna interact with your finances, eventually, if not currently, the more you're willing to bring them in, there's that trust level. It tends to ease anxieties, the restrictions. It informs them so they can too be empowered to make informed decisions about how to help you and themselves. So we encourage it all the time.
And one of the most saddest things I hear is when a child is talking about their parents are aging, and they're like, our mom won't talk about money with us. I don't know where it is, I don't know what she has, I don't know how much she has, she hides it from all of us. That is one of the worst things you could do.
And on the flip side, I hear clients on the other end where the children don't wanna talk about it either.
Yeah.
And so
I
while
wanna talk about your death.
yeah, mom or dad are very open and willing to have that conversation. I hear it a lot from, you know, my clients that say, I try to bring this up and my daughter just breaks down in tears and just, you know, shuts down. And so it definitely is a two-way street. The way I was gonna answer your question is, you know, being in the seat that I'm in, I don't mind being the bearer of bad news. I've done it before and it's not gonna be the last time. I've told kids that they're disinherited. I've told kids and beneficiaries that they're getting less than their siblings. Do I love doing it? No, but will I? Yes. But what I can tell you is that the more communicative and transparent that you are with those people, the less hurt feelings, and maybe you don't care. You know, I always tell clients, I'm like, this is your plan, this is not my plan. And so maybe you just, you know, don't really care that much to have that conversation. But if I don't love, maybe it's the lawyer in me, but I don't like saying always or never. I don't like doing like bright line rules because it makes me all nervous, But what I can tell you is, generally speaking, the more communicative and transparent you can be with everyone involved, the better. I mean, every day of the week it is better. I don't mind explaining clients' plans to their, you know, because then you're up against the game of telephone and you're like, well, I think I put you as my such and such, and then you're telling them wrong. Not maliciously, of course, they just don't, you know, understand it maybe as you know, as much as the professional on the other side of the table. So I would say, you know, I'm just meeting these two today, but I would say collectively, you know, professionals like us are always very willing to explain and help provide knowledge and information to your people as much as you want us to. Even in front, I promise I'll stop talking. I even have clients that will say, you know, I want you to explain kind of the skeletal plan, but I don't want you to tell them about, you know, how much money or, you know, how much money I got in my, you know, with Ronnie or like it. We don't have to tell them that much. I mean, we can kind of gauge how much the client's willing, or not willing, want us to share. Yeah.
How to paint that picture.
Yes.
Have you had a situation where someone didn't?
Yes.
Yep, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, didn't like communicate?
Well, no, I'm thinking like how they didn't plan legally to support their financial stability. Like, how does that look? If we think we have this legal, our finances are set. We've got a plan, but somehow something happened, we didn't protect it legally. What does that look like? Like, we failed to have the people in place.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the court and our statutes are what's taking, because you imagine, there's a lot of people that fall in that camp, where they don't do, I think it's kind of the statistic that gets thrown around is about 50% of people do no estate planning at all. And so our statutes here in this state have to be set up in a way to support those people. And so going back to it just takes you out of the driver's seat. It's the court or our state statutes that you and I were emailing about just this morning, where there are laws there in place for people that don't have documents, but not always are they going to be what you would have wanted. And so that's the beautiful thing of being able to do planning.
One thing that Ronnie runs into all the time that we see is people forget about their beneficiaries on their IRAs and like their 401ks and certain assets that they have that are beneficiary and not necessarily will driven. You've got a very old ex-spouse, you've got
Jenny's told us some stories about that.
that is, you're remarried, we see a lot of problems with second marriages.
Yes.
Cause you think if you second marriage, you and your wife had kids, she passes away, you get remarried, you pass away, all your assets go to her and to all of her kids, and your kids get nothing. So you just see it's just lack of planning and beneficiaries. People forget about the beneficiaries on their IRAs all the time, I don't know why.
Yeah.
And that's something that you ask. I mean, it's something that we flesh out when they're doing the plan.
when you guys go through it, that's
It's
yearly. I
part
think.
of every review,
Every review.
confirming beneficiaries. Because it's so important, the beneficiaries will trump what you put in a will, right? I mean, you update your will with some new idea of how you want your money distributed. Those beneficiary designations are the law of the land. The will means nothing in that case. So, and I wonder, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you run into, so, we do talk to clients sometimes about, as opposed to, it's always important to have a will, right, to have your wishes, spelled out, but, we tell the clients a lot of times we can do a lot of those same sort of estate-driven activities through beneficiary designations and, the way that you title homes, and bank accounts and some of those things. Do you run into clients that think that, hey, in order to get my estate in order, it's gonna take a big effort to go and create the will or go and sit with a lawyer? I mean, do you run into that?
From purely, like energy and effort standpoint?
Yeah, that there's not a lot of momentum or drive to handle the estate piece because it feels like it'll be a big lift of effort and money and time.
Yeah, I would say on the front end and back end. So whether it's from a pre-planning standpoint, of getting your ducks in a row, I've discovered something about myself that I'm a bit of a unicorn in this profession. A lot of estate attorneys are very poo-poo about online document generate, trustandwill.com, that's like every other commercial. I take the perspective of, if I go back to that 50% of people, die without an estate plan, their reasons or excuses are all over the place, why they didn't get it done. And I think that the more accessibility that people have to my world, the better. And so those kind of online document generate, I'm actually a fan of, because there's a whole lot of people in this country that can't afford people like me. Or maybe, my office is pretty booked out. I mean, we're about 5-6 weeks out. So you can imagine, someone calls our office today, it's, emergency level, you can't get in. And so these kind of resources, I think, are gonna help with that roadblock, from a pre-planning standpoint. And then from, when I say back end, I'm talking about kind of post-death stuff. And it sort of goes back to when I was blabbing earlier about putting, good, qualified people in these very important estate planning roles, because ultimately someone has got to pick up the baton at some point to get the ball rolling after someone passes away. Leanne and I were emailing this morning about a lady that the mother passed away in 2020. 6 years ago, in case you forgot what year it is. And there's a house still in that lady's name. But I was telling Leanne when I first got here that happens way more than people think it does. For a whole bunch of different reasons and excuses, but no one picked the baton up in that case. It's scary, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time. So yeah, I mean, I see it on both ends.
And again, it probably would be that way another 10 years if she didn't need that asset now. She's in a situation where she needs the asset.
Yeah.
Now now it's like, how do I retrieve the asset?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really
Does that
interesting.
answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's just something we always deal with as well, because to your point, right, 50% of people aren't doing the proactive estate planning, and we help as best we can, by making sure the beneficiary designations are correct and reviewing old plans and things like that. But it's one of the answers I'll continue to search for is how do you draw?
Everybody?
Yeah, how do you help
Yeah,
everybody
everybody.
and drive the importance of putting the time and attention to it without people walking away thinking it's a huge lift of effort, and even if it was, it's important effort to put in.
I guess for me, again, sitting down, having these conversations about housing, I hear all kinds of things, and I'm like, well, it's a little scary that they may have picked up this information from that neighbor or, the brother-in-law, or, it's so, I keep coming back to every individual is so individual. Their resources, their assets, their goals, that having someone that can help them navigate that whole world of confusion is so helpful. And to think about how to protect yourself, that's become very important to me as my friends get older, as I get older, is how to protect yourself, and in my case, from overspending or, doing the right
The
thing.
spending plan.
The spending plan.
I'm gonna tell my husband that tonight. It's not a budget,
The
it's
spending
spending.
plan, spending plan. How do we plan for inflation, Ronnie?
Yeah, great question. So obviously this is one of those specters that we deal with all the time, is the erosion that inflation causes on your ability for a dollar to stretch, right? A dollar today doesn't spend the same as it did 10 years ago, 30 years ago. If you're lucky enough to retire at a time when you have a lot of health and energy and finances, you're maybe planning on a 30-year retirement, right? I tell clients all the time about inflation and how it will erode some of your power to sustain that purchasing capability. And so, people are walking into retirement, and on day one, they have $1 in their accounts that they won't spend for 20 years, right? That dollar needs to be worth $3 at that point if you want to stay ahead of those inflationary pressures. So, one of the ways that, and this maybe kind of goes back a little bit to the comments around restriction as well. We see clients all the time who, have this idea that, okay, I'm retiring now. I need to get super conservative with my investments. I have to preserve every dollar that I've accumulated at this point. I don't have room to take on risk any longer. I want to get off the roller coaster. And it's perfectly acceptable sort of mindset, and one that you might anticipate. But one of the ways that we solve for that in very simplistic terms is kind of, again, earmarking different dollars for different purposes, right? If we think about buckets, right? It's literally just called the bucketing strategy. But for a lot of times what we'll do with clients is we'll say, hey, look, right, we don't necessarily want to take off your exposure to growth-based assets and the associated risk that comes with that. We can shore up your finances in a more structural fashion. We still need your money to grow. You have $1 in there that you need to spend in 20, and it's got to be worth more than it is today. The bucketing approach will typically have us go through a planning process where we're helping the client identify what's their gap, right? Here's your income sources, here's how much you need to spend, what's that difference? That's what your asset base needs to support, is that gap between your consistent sources and your expenses. Well, can we carve off, maybe even a couple years worth of that gap and set it aside in cash equivalents, CDs, things that we know are very consistent, aren't exposed to the turmoil that the market can introduce to an overall portfolio? Can we have that ready in order to survive and continue to thrive through, market turmoil? Can we slice off another couple of years to be dedicated for sort of income generation, replenishment of the cash bucket, should we ever need to dip into it? And then again, on day one of retirement, can we get really comfortable around a risk profile that allows you to anticipate growth in typically what's your largest bucket heading into retirement? Can we take care of the next couple of years of retirement just in case the market gets a little squirrely without fully removing your ability to participate in what it is the market's done consistently over time, which is trend upward? You need growth if you want to stay in a position where your lifestyle is sustained from a purchasing power.
So,
Inflation
and that's
comes
kind of
from all of us.
changed over the years, right? As we've gotten to where we live older, because it used to be pretty
Yeah.
much, as soon as you were done accumulating, switching over to a pretty conservative.
Yeah. And
Thinking that you only have this to spend.
Yeah, and I'm only gonna live a certain, it just felt like it was,
well, to point, right, I mean, people who are retiring in their early to mid-60s are living longer
Yes.
than they ever have before.
So they definitely need their money to keep growing.
It has to stretch further than previous generations needed their money to stretch. And so you have to stay engaged in what's happening with your money. You have to make, to the best of your ability, right, don't make mistakes that are gonna increase your tax bill unnecessarily. Keep more of your money instead of giving it to Uncle Sam.
Tax bill being one of the more expensive, yeah.
Every single year, one of the most expensive bills you'll pay. And so, yeah, inflation comes for us all, whether we're working, whether we're retired. It is the continued erosion of the ability for a dollar to spend. And especially when you're not accumulating any longer, when you're accumulating, inflation still matters, but you're kind of feeding the furnace, right? You're making money, you're spending it to support your lifestyle, but then you're saving. So as the markets dip over time and things like that, you're kind of buying your retirement on a discount if the market pulls back. That can make a lot of people afraid heading into retirement that I can't afford a downturn. That may or may not be true, but that doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have any exposure to the growth potential. And there's different ways to address that risk, and we do a lot of that structurally.
And you're planning for those downturns.
You got it.
Like, it's pretty cyclical if you're
Yeah.
looking over the long haul.
Yeah, nobody's gonna be able to put a specific date out there as to when the next downturn starts, but you just need to be prepared. And you can do that structurally, you can do that with your different types of investment exposures. But you got money in your account today that you won't spend for 10 years. It can weather a 2-year downturn. And we just gotta get you to a point where you are confident and comfortable that that's true, and then structure your different abilities to generate income.
Ronnie, what long-term inflation rate do you use for financial planning with your clients?
Typically, we're gonna default to about a 3% inflationary target, if you will. It just depends on how conservative we wanna plan. I always default to a very conservative viewpoint when it starts with planning. We can make your plan work with high inflationary pressure, low market returns. If your plan works, right, through some of the worst potential variable outcomes, then we know it'll work fine otherwise.
What range would you say would be considered high and low? I mean, 3 is probably like middle of the road.
Yeah,
Where would you put the brackets in?
I mean, if I'm stress testing an actual plan that I'm putting together, I'll run it as high as 5, but from a planning scenario, that's gonna take into account a sustained average of 5%. That'd be fairly unprecedented. And so, I'd say probably about 3 to 5, but 5 is, that's just an extreme stress test, yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, good question.
Ms. Kim, how can we create this predictable cash flow? Is there a way to, hopefully there's a way to?
Well, it kind of goes back to understanding and leveling out when you have your needs year to year, because from a tax perspective, you look at 1 year of income, you pay your tax, you go to the next year. You don't get to average it over time. So we need to make sure that, kind of like we talked about, if your income is this low, we might tell you to take this much income. And then you need this much, well, maybe we take a little bit more the year before and a little bit more the year after. I have a lot of people that are gonna sell assets, and they're like, how can I sell this farm and help myself? And so I'll tell them, can you get 2 payments? Can you get one in December and one in January? You know, can we level out your cash flow so it doesn't hit IRMA, so it doesn't hit the highest tax bracket in 1 year, and then the next year you're going to 0.
We do that all the time with like distributions. Somebody has a large distribution need from a pre-tax account, if we're close enough to, different tax years, can we structure it in a way where we're gonna recognize some of that tax in the current year and recognize some of that tax in the next year, and kind of smooth out the impact there.
I'm trying to think of how that works from a real estate perspective, like, as you're selling, it's.
Well, maybe if you're gonna sell something and you're leaving your job, are you gonna get your W-2 income and a severance? Well, then let's not sell that house, let's not sell that farm this year, let's wait till January,
Yes, okay.
when you're not gonna have as much income, and you can live off that income and not have to pull a bunch.
Yes, okay.
We'll have people who can pay a larger amount in cash for a home, right, or maybe a down payment. We'll have them finance more to minimize the distribution there at the end of the year. We'll have them finance more with the idea that we can create a distribution in January and they can recast or refinance their mortgage to control their cash flow better long-term, but we're adding some efficiencies into the tax return in regards to how they get the cash for the down payment.
This changes my conversation with clients, yeah. It's like, maybe we should pull your advisors in on these decisions,
Sure.
or what does your advisor say that you should do?
Do you have an advisor?
Yes.
That's,
Who is your advisor?
Who is your advisor?
That's amazing. Jenny, I'm gonna ask you, we had a discussion last month about long-term planning, and it was not pretty. For any of those over here, remember that. My question to you is, how does long-term care considerations fit financially? Like how, cause you deal with that a lot, don't you?
Oh, yeah, so I wasn't here last month, but I venture to guess that the tone was that it's really expensive.
Yes.
Yes. So just to throw out some numbers and keep in mind, we're in a very low cost of living state. Assisted living is going to be about that's almost a pipe dream, 4,000 to 5,000 a month. The more care someone needs, the more that's going to go up, of course.
And we're learning now, even assisted living, there's levels.
Yes.
Yes.
So like memory care, is a level in there. Skilled nursing, really 9,000 a month is sort of that ship has sailed. It's usually about 10, 11, 12,000 a month.
Is that when someone comes to your home?
Say that again?
Is that when someone comes to your home?
No, skilled nursing is like nursing home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Home health care is all over the board because it's often hourly. So whether someone needs maybe like, 20 hours a week versus around the clock care.
And it really
That's the
depends, like,
difference.
that's where you can ascertain like what kind of assets or resources and family and
Yeah.
time and friends, so, but yeah, it's expensive no matter what, and sometimes that $9,000 to $12,000 when we think about skilled nursing, when you add up someone coming to your home for that many hours, it's up there too.
Yeah, so I think, obviously those are shocking amounts, right? And so I think the name of the game today is proactive planning. There are tools in all of our tool belts up here, whether it's someone, maybe you need to consider long-term care insurance. I don't sell long-term care insurance, so I can say this truly unbiased. There are way better products now than there were, 20 plus years ago. I hear from clients often, well, my dad had a long-term care insurance policy and it didn't pay and it was a hunk of junk. And I hear that all the time, but the products nowadays, whether they're like hybrid policies that are tied up, kind of wrapped up in like a life insurance policy, there's better products nowadays for that. But the longer you wait, and if you have a medical event, the more difficult it is to qualify. So again, going back to proactive planning, if long-term care is something that, you just can't sleep at night because you're worried about, you need to be bringing that up to kind of the professionals around you. In my world, in the elder law side of my practice, we do a lot of what's called Medicaid asset protection planning. So a lot of the times that's, for folks, whether they are maybe proactively planning, but they don't have long-term care insurance, there are ways that you can protect and preserve your assets against long-term care and Medicaid. So we do it for kind of my proactive planners in the room, but we also do it in kind of crisis situations, whether maybe mom, dad, whoever is on the doorstep of a nursing home. They see the cost that it's gonna be, and they're just like, what? Are there any other options? And that's when, families will come to elder law attorneys like my office, just to really figure out what their options are. But the more proactive that you are, the more options there are on the table. But if I anchor it, I have a way of just going off on this random rabbit hole. But if I go back to the question, long-term care it can be quite the impactful thing on your financial plan. I always tell people, as soon as I learn how to, tell the future, I'll buy a big billboard on 465 and tell people I'll make way more money doing that than being a lawyer. But until then, we don't know. I always jokingly tell people that when it's my time to like start, not doing so well, when it's my time to go, I hope I'm in my bed with my dogs. My husband may or may not be there, but my bed and my dogs, that's where I want to be. And so it could be possible that you do all this planning and you never use it because maybe you go away in your sleep or one big catastrophic incident. It's the what if something does happen. You need to have have a plan for it in advance, because the more that you wait, the more those options come off the table, and sometimes it's just you gotta pony up that whatever it is a month and just be fine with it because you didn't plan in advance. Sometimes that's the only option on the table left.
I think most of us have seen some form of aging care that you're like, I don't wanna live that way, so, I think for me, that's another reason why I'm here is I think I would like to plan and not need the plan.
Can I comment?
Please.
Or piggyback, because long-term care costs can be so high depending on the kind of care that you need. And it can be an extended cost that you're exposed to. I mean, your exposure to elevated healthcare costs could last years. We see that put a lot of pressure on, what we're trying to do from a financial planning perspective, in situations where, maybe one spouse has a health crisis that lasts a few years in their early to mid 70s, and the remaining spouse will live another 15 years beyond. That can put a significant amount of financial pressure on the remaining spouse if you're ponying up a lot of cash and you didn't plan proactively. As with like any risk, there's a couple ways you can address it, right? You can just accept it, which is, hey, I may have these big bills I gotta pay for at some point. That may just be a reality, and I accept it. I hope I can do that. You can avoid it. I have clients all the time that come in and joke about not going to a nursing home. They're gonna strap on some skis, put on a blindfold, and let me go, right?
That's way too slow.
Right, yeah. You can avoid long-term care costs by dying, right? Or insurance companies allow you to transfer it, right? And that's where, to Jenny's point, the sooner you're addressing the potential impact that elevated costs can have on you and a spouse, it gives you just the most options, just like we talked about before. Being informed, having the education on what is the potential impact of doing A, B, or C, puts you in a position to choose which of those you wanna do. Accepting the risk is perfectly fine. We work with clients all the time that are self-insured. They can absorb those costs. We work with just as many that cannot absorb those costs, and so we need to address it differently and understand what our options are. But proactive planning is the only way to be prepared.
Yeah.
Can I say something about long-term care?
Yes, please.
If, for whatever it's worth, we got it when we were in our 50s because we were advised by a financial advisor to do that, and I can tell you that it's under $100 a month, and I'm glad we didn't
That's
wait.
awesome.
So if anybody's thinking about it and you're on the younger part of it, and the other thing that's really nice about it is as you get older, it's typical to worry about what's gonna happen if I need help, and when you have long-term care, part of it's taken care of. And it's really makes it less stressful, and I do have 3 friends who have used long-term care just recently and still using it, and it was a little bit difficult to get into it, a little bit hard to get going with it. You had to pass a 30-day plan or whatever, but after that, it paid what they said it would pay, and so the younger you can get it, the better it is.
And
Yeah.
Judy, to your point, you have some friends that have used it. Those that have policies in place, right, and again, insurance is not the perfect option for everybody to address it, but for those that have policies in place, we tend to see that they seek out care earlier, right? And so their needs are addressed quicker. They don't deteriorate quite as quickly.
They're not putting it off
They're
until
not-
it's really bad.
Exactly, they're not waiting until it's a crisis situation to seek out help, and then their options are limited.
Oh, that's a good
great
perspective,
point,
yeah. Yeah, good,
How
because
about-
it is time for us to open it up to our guests, so thank you. Yes, Miss Betsy?
How about about people, have you seen them underspending? I see a lot of elder people saying, I cannot afford this, and they live very limited and, you know, kind of cutting off even their feeding and all of that because they feel like they can't spend that much, and then, oh surprise, they're sitting in a lot of money.
That's probably more common than not.
Yeah.
In my experience.
That's just not knowing what you have and not having a plan.
Yeah, not checking in maybe where we're at on that plan.
Yeah, we see it all the time. I mean, it's part of that mental switch that needs to happen in order to have kind of a fruitful retirement where you're taking advantage of all the work that you've done to accumulate and prepare, and now it's actually paying off for you. A lot of times it's just misunderstanding or misinformation about what does my retirement nest egg, what can it actually really support? And then having some of that fear about, well, if I spend today, that means I won't have this dollar tomorrow in case, you know, my car craps out on me. Well, you have $1 million. You can spend $10 going to lunch today.
Yeah.
And I do think that, I think we're learning more, at least I am, that it's not just a one and done visit. It's a
Exactly.
staying together, it's you know, updating one another. It's more like, you used to think about tax plan, you know, you see your accountant every year, but you actually see your financial, you know, advisor every year, check in with your attorney every year and make sure we're all still on course, and then you might not get so sideways, one way too high or too low.
Yeah. It's almost like an accountability check, cause I think it's very natural to feel that
Yeah.
way. I mean,
It doesn't take much to get off course, does
I'm a
it?
full-fledged working adult and I feel that way. I get it, I mean, so I think, you know, it's very natural to fall back in that cycle. And if anything, I'm sure that accountability, check of just, everything's still okay, yeah.
It made you feel better, just,
Mhm.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You come from 3 different perspectives, and I do wanna open it up, but I wanted to give you an opportunity, I'll ask each one of you, piece of advice, what should we do?
Action plan.
And actually, what do you think we should walk away with?
Have professionals,
Good, yeah, absolutely.
have an accountant, have a financial advisor, have an attorney, and make sure that they all talk.
Now
That
that's,
should be.
yeah, I like that idea.
And obviously I'm biased, but I'm gonna double down on that because it's so important. And you can roll the dice with your finances, but the reality is they drive every bit of your access to care, to opportunities, to feel comfortable and confident retiring, and they're too important to take a chance with. And so if it's not within your wheelhouse to feel really confident creating your own plan, testing the health of it against potential variables and things like that, to Kim's point, seek out a professional. We exist. We help clients literally every single day answer some of the most simple questions and just do some baseline education, which then informs different actions that they might take, to doing very, very detailed, business and exit planning. And like, there's professionals out there to help you organize your own financial picture. And I talk about financial planning that way all the time. All we're doing is we are putting all your puzzle pieces on the table. We're flipping them all over so you understand what they look like. And then we're rearranging them a couple different ways to figure out what's the prettiest picture we can paint, we can put together for you. And there's people there that can help you do that, and it's important enough to do it, whether it's on your own or with professional help. Be proactive about your finances.
Jenny?
I would say, agree, but I'll say, this is like an uber specific thing, that if there's something I see over and over and over where people are figuratively, emphasis on figuratively, caught with their pants down in my world, check to make sure you have something called a financial power of attorney. It is such an important document. I'm not talking a healthcare power of attorney, I'm talking about a financial one. I would argue until I'm blue in the face that is probably the most important document out of all of them, even over a will. It is such an important document. People in my world, they always talk about wills and trusts, and I'm like, can we please talk about the basics as well? And a power of attorney, I guess I should explain it. Financial power of attorney gives someone else the authority to make financial decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself. In healthcare side of things, there's kind of this like default in our Indiana statutes that if you don't have a healthcare power of attorney, it would resort to that. So our Indiana statutes have your back on that, but there's no such default pecking order in our statutes for financial. And if it becomes too late, that's when you're looking at guardianship, which is way more expensive and way more time lengthy and all that. And so that's what I would say. If you check, if you have a plan, make sure you have a financial power of attorney in there. If you don't, by golly, at least get that one in place. So important.
Just got a question about the financial power of attorney. Do you have to have a doctor sign off on that as to the individual can't make these decisions any longer?
It's my favorite lawyer in the world. Favorite lawyer answer in the world. It depends on the type of power of attorney. There's something called a springing power of attorney that doesn't normally activate until some sort of triggering event, and that's typically the triggering event is incapacity being documented. In my 15 years of doing this, I've done one springing power of attorney. I don't like them because doctors don't like doing that. They don't like saying, oh, John Smith is out of his mind, let's take all of his decisions away. They don't like doing that, and so there's always a delay. So if I'm even more specific, I like durable power of attorneys that give someone the authority as soon as they don't have to wait on any sort of doctor's note or anything like that.
Yeah, Lisa.
I just wanna piggyback on that. So, my name is Lisa Kellum, and I'm with Storin. And, one of our 4 pillars is financial wellness. And, what we do in there is serve as, power of attorneys. For those clients that we have served that have not chosen the power of attorney, the worst phone call that I get is from the hospital or someplace else where a client says, because they just were nervous about power of attorney, Lisa, I need you to take care of all of my bills. And I say, I would love to, but I have no authority to do that. And, you know, they're stuck, they're stranded, they don't know what they're gonna do. Now, I'm creative, and I am determined, and I will help them as much as I can. But having that power of attorney in place is so absolutely critical. With the clients that I serve, that is the single most important document. I've been at this for 9 years, and that is the single most important document that provides security. It allows us to continue to take care of the things, keep the electricity on, talk to people about bills that are coming through that are not, you know, correct, or they're overbilled or whatever. You know, keep things running. And that's the thing that really makes that happen, that durable financial power of attorney. Without it, people get stranded.
Why do you think people don't do that?
They don't know.
They don't know what it is.
They don't know, and I think it's a loss of control too.
Yeah.
They think that, oh, I'm gonna appoint Ronnie as my, I'm using you as an example, I'm appointing Ronnie as my power of attorney.
Bad idea.
And, well, what if he takes all my money? Well, then we're not thinking of the right person. So I think it's a little bit of, that's why I was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna talk about power of attorney answering this question, is because a lot of people don't know what it is. They think doing a will is enough. There's fear in that too. There's a lot of different reasons.
I like that idea though. If I'm afraid that they're gonna do this, then I'm not thinking of the right person.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that's
Oh yeah.
really
That's what I'll tell
good
people.
point,
I'm
yeah.
like, maybe we're not thinking of the right person.
And
Yeah.
that's why there's people like her.
Yeah.
It's not the eldest son
Yes.
or the youngest or my cousin. It's somebody who's gonna be wise of what I need to do.
Yeah, ask your questions, because if you're thinking of them, somebody else is thinking.
Oh, yeah,
questions.
unless someone has another question about POA, I'm just gonna switch topics to
Good,
taxes. So, living without fear in retirement, one of the things was inflation. We talked about long-term planning rates for inflation. Let's talk taxes and long-term planning for taxes. How on earth do you project out 30 years in the future when tax rates could change, next year,
It's even like doing it.
so like, how do you like talk with clients about, okay, let's plan for these tax rates, long term? How do you handle that?
Well, we don't know what the tax rates are gonna be. However, if you look at history, they don't change that much. So I know there's always the fear of like capital gains rates are gonna go away, so capital gains are gonna go from 15 to 32. And it just hasn't happened. So I think when you guys look at, you just use today's rates, and there's nothing else that you can do.
Well, within some of the tools that I use to do some actual, advanced planning, I call it, we can adjust those, just like I can with the inflation, so we can kind of stress test, hey, if tax expense were to be 20 or 30% higher on a persistent basis, how much pressure does that put on our ability to navigate? We talk a lot about take advantage of the taxes when you know what they are. We do a lot of Roth conversions, we have people lean into Roth type of, tax-free type of savings, strategies. HSA is my favorite account of all time, it's the only one that, is tax-free in all ways that you can use it, money going in, growing in, coming out. So, we talk to clients all the time about the only known is now. Some could change even next year. We're gonna work under the assumption that it won't from a planning perspective, but then be prepared to navigate. I talk about going down that highway, right? So whether it's in retirement or on the accumulation side. What we're trying to do from a planning perspective is just identify what are the potholes that are gonna ruin your car, right? We try to put together the car in the best possible fashion, and then can we identify the potholes that can really do some damage, and then help you navigate around them, right? No clue what tax is gonna be like in 10 years, which is exactly why, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, if you have room on your tax return in the 10 or 12% bracket, we're probably gonna talk about how do we take money out of pre-tax exposure while we can control our tax bill today. Can we have you experience some tax at the 10 and 12% level to create for yourself tax-free money down the road in the event taxes do change, and we need to navigate that.
If tax rates go up 20%, then there's a lot more problems than there's a reason.
I was just thinking how much that really affects your watching your politics too, when you're thinking about all of that.
Yeah, don't let politics scare you. We have checks and balances for all of that.
I would say if I could add on to everything they said, I tend to be a positive Polly kind of person, so I lean towards that. Just as much as things could change for the bad, they could change for the good. And I think that it really emphasizes the importance of these aren't just transactional relationships, they're relationships where, I immediately while they were talking, I was like, there's these new Trump accounts where you can, get basically, if really young, I think there's 3 years or something, I don't know, that's more their world.
Yeah.
But where it's $1,000 from the government when there's these teeny tiny little babies can get these taxes change, laws change. I mean, I do a lot of Medicaid work, not Medicare, Medicaid. If you've even looked at the news for 3 seconds, you'll see Medicaid story eventually. So Medicaid's constantly changing. So I think it really emphasizes the relationship aspect. That's, I hate to say it like this, but it's kind of what you pay us for, is that we're keeping an eye on that stuff. That way that you can have the peace of mind knowing that that's their thing. And I would kind of like what we were just saying. Yeah, it's very much intertwined with politics. We love it or hate it. It's just the way it is. But just as much as there could be bad stuff, there could be good stuff. Like when she was talking about taxes, a lot of times the estate tax thresholds, they usually just keep on going up. They really don't ever come down. I don't think in my 15 years I've ever seen them come down, regardless of who's in the White House. So
Nobody wants to sign that bill.
no, they wouldn't get. Yeah, they wouldn't get elected. Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a question. We mentioned, about selling a home and then your, Medicare payments can go down. How does that work? Because if you sell a home for $400,000 or $500,000 and you're planning to invest it in another home or you're planning to invest it to live off of in a nursing home, are your payments still going to go up in a couple of years if you sold your house for that kind of money, but you've reinvested it and used it?
Nobody cares if you reinvest it.
Yeah.
It is all about that year and what's your income. There was a law back in the 80s, I think, or the 90s, where it used to be that you had to buy your house, you had to buy another one and buy another one. I mean, that's been so long ago, I can't remember it now. But now the rule is, when you sell your house, if you've lived in it for more than 2 years, you don't pay tax per person on the first $250,000 of gain. So, if you sell your house, normally, you're not gonna have a taxable gain of over 500,000, we don't see that much in Indiana. And so you're not gonna have any taxable income.
Oh, so, I was gonna ask you about that, because
Yeah.
I knew there was a write-off,
And so it used to
so
be that you
you're
had to
only
like,
taxed on what goes above that.
yeah, you used to be that you had to like reinvest it. Not the case anymore. Nobody cares what you do with your money. They only care about what did you sell and how much was taxable income at that point on your tax return.
Okay, thanks.
Not that nobody
Question,
cares,
Great
but-
question, yes.
Yeah, I have a similar question from Mrs. Story. I mean, so if I sell my house at around 63 and my capital gain is less than 500,000, so I don't need to pay tax for joint, my
And
husband
it's-
and I.
It's $250,000 per person, so if you're married,
Yeah.
you and your husband get $500,000. You do not pay tax on that capital gain, not the sale price. So let's say you bought a house for 200 and you sell it for 700. You guys do not pay tax on the first $500,000 of gain on the home.
I don't need to pay the gain, but I need to pay the lower part. Pay the 20.
Nope. No gain,
I
yeah.
don't need to pay any tax, so 165 when I get Medicare, it doesn't affect my
Right,
premium.
it will not affect it, cause it's not income, so it won't hit your tax return.
And it doesn't have anything to do with your age, it's all about the gain on your, home.
It means when I sell my house, the capital gain is less than 500,000, my husband and I don't need to worry about Medicare, Irma.
That's right.
Right.
Okay.
Unless it's over 500,000, right?
Mhm.
You know, if you buy over 200,000, it's worth, you
Yeah,
know,
like,
1.2 million, then,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, you like
There's
I
some
buy
things.
like 300,000 and I sell less than 800,000.
Well,
My
fine.
capital gain is, I remove that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, if you sell it for 900, then you'll have $100,000 of taxable gain on your tax return.
I have a question about that too, then again. If you,
I think she had
Oh, I'm
another,
sorry.
one
I'm
more
sorry.
question, did you have another question?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Did that answer your question?
yeah, yes. I mean, if more than 500,000, I need to pay the above part tax, and that might affect my IRMA.
Yep.
Okay, and I have question, if when I'm ready to be retired, I have questions about my distribution plan of IRA or cash flow, credit cash flow or something, or who I should to talk with your company, like me, Kim or Ronnie, and what's the consulting fee I need to pay?
So if you call in, we have somebody that will talk to you about what exactly that you're looking for. Are you looking for what's gonna be the tax on that IRA? Or are you looking on what's your plan for that IRA overall?
Yeah,
If-
like how to say? Planning for the future.
Yeah,
IRA
planning for the future is
distribution.
Ronnie. He is all about that future
Yeah,
where,
planning for the
That's it.
future IRA distribution and also prepare for spendings like buy car or fix homes or something
That's
like
the type of
that.
stuff myself,
That's
my
your-
colleagues, we're not the only game in town, we think we are really good at what we do, but that's where a financial planner is gonna be able to help you answer some of those questions, give you some education on, you know, how do people typically interact with their different account types and what are the different ramifications, that's the stuff we talk to clients about literally every day.
and since we have a tax piece of that also, then Ronnie's also knowledgeable on the tax side of that and can answer both questions.
That's a great question, thank you for asking. It's like, who does what?
Yeah.
Yes. Good. All right, Judy, you had another question.
In reference to the capital gain on the house, if you bought your house for 200 and sell it for 5, okay, so you've made $300,000, are you allowed to, deduct from that gain the money that you've spent to improve that house, that is sold that?
Yeah.
Because I've got a list of everything we ever did in our house.
Yeah, no, so if you're gonna sell it for less than 700, we don't care,
Okay,
cause there's no taxable gain anyway. But if you're gonna start selling it for 800, oh yeah, we're gonna be sitting down going, you know, windows, tree removal, you know, what did you add on a thing? What were your closing costs when you bought it? What were your closing costs when you sold it, you know?
that's what I thought you could do.
We're gonna get that
Okay.
100,000
That's where what you
down
spend
to-
on accounts.
Yeah,
That's where what you spent on accounts.
Yeah.
Great.
yeah,
Now, do I need receipts for those windows?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Now,
I'll let
you
Judy
only
has-
really need it if
Judy
you get
has.
audited.
That's what I
Yeah.
tell people all the time, is you need it if the IRS comes
This is
knocking.
for
Okay.
home
Yeah.
improvements though, not just maintenance, so like.
Yeah, maintenance you
price-
can't do, it has to be truly like things that stay with the home when you
Upgrades.
sell it.
Yeah.
Like adding a sunroom, which we
Yeah.
did, that's not gonna stay, that's
Yeah.
going with the house.
I was confused on where that fine line is between maintenance and,
Well,
that's
improvement,
true.
because,
That's
like,
the
for example,
universal
air
question.
conditioning, if you take your old air conditioning unit and upgrade it to a higher, more efficient, you know,
Mhm.
it's,
Yeah.
you know, is that considered an
What's a
upgrade?
repair, what's an improvement, that's the age-long question of,
Because somebody could say windows, I mean, you need new windows.
and that stays
Could
with
be
the house,
amazing.
so.
More energy efficient.
Yeah.
Good stuff to think about. More questions?
I have a question about, you
Janet.
said the beneficiary, trumps a will.
Mhm.
So if you have your beneficiary set
Mhm.
and your trust, you need a will. Or should you have all of those,
If you have a trust.
if you
is-
have a trust?
So when you have a trust, you still typically have a will. It's informally in my world called a pour over will. And if you look at the language in the will, it probably is the beneficiary of the will is the trust. The purpose of that pour over will, I have weird analogies for everything, but I always compare it to like if you pass away and there's these assets, you know, maybe there's like an old life insurance policy you forgot about, or like your Christmas bank account that you're secretly hiding from your husband or whatever. It's like a claw machine. The will like grabs that and gets it into the trust. So that's the purpose of you. When you have a trust, you still have a will. It's typically called a pour over will, and that's the purpose of it, is to grab anything that's forgotten about, missed, whatever, and get them dumped into the trust. Yeah, my little claw machine.
Maybe you find out that you have a painting worth millions of dollars that you had no idea, and it's not listed anywhere.
Or you bought a winning lottery ticket yesterday and you died today. I'm gonna need that pour over will, and probably then. Back to the love.
It's full circle.
Yeah.
A different way to answer the question though is that if you have your beneficiaries buttoned up, you have maybe a trust, right? Those can do a lot of the heavy lifting. They don't get the pieces that a pour over will is gonna capture. Or the pour over will is a nice complement to having those pieces, but because they stand in front of your wishes as described in a will, it is super, super important to have those done. And if done correctly, they do probably 99% of the work that you need from a distribution perspective.
They should work together,
Absolutely.
the beneficiary designations and the trust.
So yes, you need all.
Good question.
I have one question for Jenny.
Yeah.
Usually what kind of bills I need to pay after I pass away? What kind of trouble I will bring to my kids if I don't have power of attorney or will? How to prepare this before I?
That's a great question.
So power of attorneys, fun fact, maybe not so fun, is they terminate, they end at your death. And so that's the role for that would be the executor of your will, or personal representative is what Indiana calls them, or a trustee of a trust. From there, it kind of depends on what, there's my favorite lawyer answer again, it depends on, in terms of expenses. So I have some clients that will do funeral pre-planning. So there is not any sort of expense related to funerals, but a lot of people don't do it, and so there's that expense. There's usually taxes to address, even if it's merely just filing a final personal return. We see very, small personal expenses as well, like final credit card bills, final or hospital ambulance bills. So it really depends on the situation. There's not like this set type of expense that happens every single person. Sorry, my tummy's growling if the microphone is picking up. I didn't have time for lunch. It depends on what your situation is, whether you have credit cards, whether you live in a hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, like if I have hospital bills, ambulance bills, and if I pass away, my kids must pay those.
The executor would be responsible for doing that.
From your estate.
Yes.
So,
Your kid might be
Your
your
kid might be
executor,
your
but-
executor, but the technical legal role for the person responsible for addressing everything after you pass away is the executor.
But
And they'll
maybe
use-
her question is that if she doesn't have anything ready and she has credit card bills and hospital bills, would they come after her kids for them to pay those bills?
Is that what your question is?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so if someone passes away with debt, it depends on the type of debt. If there's someone attached to that debt and has like co-signed it, for example, then they would be responsible for it. But things like credit cards, medical bills, those are unsecured, and so they would not be technically legally responsible for paying those. It depends on whose names are attached to the debt. So for example, a mortgage on a house, if there's anyone else that's attached to that mortgage, then they're gonna have to continue with that financial responsibility.
Like my husband,
Yes.
Yeah, if he's on the mortgage,
Yeah.
yes,
and he need to pay my leftover bills.
yes, yes.
If, okay. So, is that better if I have a power of attorney or wills to illustrate precisely who get my assets and who pay the bills?
Will you say that again?
I don't know how to say.
Just maybe a little louder.
Okay, like, for example, if I worry about my bills, hospital bills, some kind of bills after I pass away, do I need to point in my will or power of attorney who will do it exactly?
It would be your executor.
Mm-hmm.
Executor.
It
What does that
changes. We
It's the
think a
person
lot
who,
about.
it's the person who leads the will, who is in charge of executing the will, of making sure that the things specified in the will are done. That's the person who sort of takes charge of the will when you die.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
the-
you're thinking power of attorney because that person's doing these things for you, and it's an
That's while you're
executor act-
living.
Yeah.
Power attorney is when you're alive.
They
After
help
you're
you when
dead,
you're alive.
The power attorney is useless.
And then when
Don't we feel smart?
Oh,
We know some things, aren't we?
Power of attorney is useless.
Yes,
Yeah.
Power of attorney is no good
After
you
you
pass
die.
You want a power of attorney and an executor.
Yes.
You
Yes.
want both of them
Yes.
And it could be the same person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be.
to make it.
It's just a different designation legally.
Power of attorney when you're alive,
So the.
executor of your will when you're dead, and if you have a trust, trustee, or successor trustee, if it's a, well, it's getting complicated.
I know, that's why I could go on for.
Is this your
Yeah.
husband?
The best thing is to go see them.
The
Yeah.
executor will be my bill.
So what do you do with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you mean the executor will decide who will pay my leftover
Yes,
bills?
yes, they are in charge.
The executor will be the one doing it.
Yeah.
They'll be the one paying it.
Yep,
Okay.
But the big difference would be if your state, if you have the money to pay your bills. But let's say you die and you have nothing. and you still have medical bills. Nobody's gonna come after your kids
Yeah.
and say, your mom died and didn't pay this bill, the hospital bill, so you pay me. Now, if you have assets and money, then it's when you have to decide who is gonna decide to do this out of that money, not their own money, your money that you leave behind.
You mean like the executor will sell my house to take some money to pay my bills?
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
You got it.
So I have to do something.
You. I was like, I have some work to do. We all do.
We all
That's why we're
I
here.
have a question. For example, if I have account, I put my two kids for half benefit for that. Do I need to still make a will for them or not?
For if you have beneficiaries on things.
Yeah, for example,
She's got a condo to sell.
I
yeah.
put my kids and half 50% for each. And do I need to still made a will for that?
So she
or
has
not?
her kids on the deed to get the condo 50-50.
It depends on what your deed says. There are different types of property ownership. This is why they send us all to law school.
Yeah.
Because it's really annoyingly complicated. But it depends on if it shows their names or your names with rights of survivorship, it would go to them at your passing. Outside of the will, outside of probate. But if there is nothing, if it just says their names, there's nothing, in terms of a property ownership, then it's going, your interest in that condo would go through your will. So it really depends. There's no way for me to answer that without seeing the deed.
Wouldn't there be a huge tax bill on that?
Yeah, and transferring
Hopefully
it.
she hasn't gifted it to him.
If I don't will, I pass the will, how can I do it?
Okay, if you have a will and they're.
I don't have a will.
Okay.
Yeah, if I don't have a will,
If-
and I try to make a will, but
Yeah.
something happened, I will pass the will, and how can kids do that for?
Got it.
Yeah.
You know what the answer is going to be. I don't know your family to know if you're married, if you have siblings, if you have any kids that are predeceased. It depends on your family setup and who's living, who's not, to be able to answer that.
Is it safe to say that if you don't have a will, it's gonna go through a
Probate.
probate process where the courts are gonna decide based off a set of rules, who gets what?
And it may end up with your two kids, but to know that answer, I'd have to know your family tree, to confirm that.
Like most questions, they need to have more information before they can answer it.
And maybe the takeaway there is if you want something specific to happen, you gotta be proactive in setting it up.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Probate
via a
is
will or.
a lot more expensive than just having a will.
Yeah,
Well, you still have to go through probate with just a will.
Right. But without the will,
Yeah.
it goes on a lot longer, there's a lot more legal
Yeah.
fees involved, it's very complicated. without
It's
the
a
will.
stranger to distribute yourself.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, I know my friend and she wrote a will, but she come to other state for library
Oh.
and just for notary. This will works or not, but she don't want to spend the money for lawyer, she just want to write
That's-
something.
That's a lack of prioritization is what I'll say about that. Going back
Because we
to,
have.
what she was saying earlier, I have a lot of people that will say, well, I can't afford you. I'm like, well, I can see your entire net worth. That is a lack of prioritization.
I've seen that several times.
So,
My mom.
All right, friends, we are going to go ahead and close. Before you go, I had started to say there were a couple of things on your chairs. There was a worksheet for you to complete, make notes, but there's also the blue survey. Your information is so very important to us. Please fill out that survey before you leave and lay it on the table upside down with Miss Kayla. Think about today. Think about the one takeaway that you would like to accomplish this month. Write that down on your blue survey. We want to see what that is. What's your takeaway? And then obviously put it on your notes so you don't forget it. Yeah. We will have our education panelists on the outside of the room. Our panelists can go ahead and unclip their mics and then they're available to you as well. Again, put a face with a name, ask your questions. They'll be around just for a few more minutes. And as always, if you need anything, that's what we're here for. Ask your questions, call us. We want to help. Next month, at our Senior Living Series, which is the first Monday, or the second Monday of the month, it's Medicare Decoded, what it covers, what it doesn't, and what it costs you. That should be interesting. I'm gonna come back and talk about that one. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So we need
So good to see you again.
Thank you.
Don't forget to fill out your survey. Any of you that were great, we never done it.
That's okay.
Oh, good. We would love your social security.
Use it as a writing tool.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you Friday at 2 o'clock, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Great, how are you doing? Have you started to see the emails about eye testing? No, but I'm going to sit down and get that done. Oh, they are?
So there's one more. So yeah, so general is very.